Alright everybody, let's go over the build. So for the archetypes, I am using the Hunter as Prime with the Hunter's Focus skill. Now that's going to be really important for this build because you're basically always going to be ADSing as much as possible. It's really the point of the build to get out as much damage as you can. And then for the secondary archetype, I'm using the Gunslinger, which is going to help with our fire rate, damage, and reload speed. And then for the skill, I am using Bulletstorm. Onto the armor. This is kind of a matter of personal preference. I just wanted to make something that looked a little bit unique for this build, so I've got some medley of armors here, and I've got this heavy roll here, the slow dodge and 50% stamina cost penalty, but I find that it works just fine for me anyways. Over onto the relic, I am using the Shielded Heart. I really do like this relic. I think it helps you survive a lot of damage in Apocalypse you wouldn't necessarily survive otherwise, especially when you're running kind of a squishier build like this. And then inside of it, I am using the ranged critical damage, ranged critical chance, and ranged damage augments. Onto the weapon. Now this is the core of this build. The whole purpose here was to create a Bulletstorm build around the LMG, and I used the SMG to supplement that Bulletstorm. So, I am using the XMG57 Bonesaw, and I've got the Song of Aether mod on here. Now, the mod is not super critical. You can kind of use whatever you would like. I just like the Song of Aether because I really think it helps with the world clears, especially if you're getting charged by a bunch of mobs at the same time. You can slow them all down and use that moment to sit there and just mow them down. And then for the mutator, I'm using Deadly Calm. Continuously aiming increases range damage up to 20% over 3 seconds, and then range critical hit chance increased by 10%. I've tested out a bunch of different mutators for this build, and I actually find this one to be the best, even over something like Bandit, because if you use Bandit, you're actually just going to overheat your gun, and it doesn't really matter. I try to keep the heat down on this as much as possible, but it's inevitable. You keep firing, this gun is going to overheat. Onto the melee weapon, I'm just using Smolder here. It's really up to you. I just like the aesthetics of Smolder. And then for the secondary, I am using the MP60-R handgun, which is the SMG. I'm using the Healing Shot mod on it just to give myself a little bit of health in an emergency if I need to. And then I have Bandit on the SMG to help keep the bullets flying when the LMG is out of commission, which is not going to be very often. Onto the amulets and rings. For the amulet, I am using the Gunslinger's Charm. Now, I've tested a bunch of different amulets here as well, and this is really the one that I find to perform the best, not just because the fire rate, but that reload speed is going to be a huge benefit as well when you inevitably have to reload your LMG. For the rings, I am using the Stone of Balance, increasing our damage by 7%. Zania's Malice, which is dealing weak spot damage, increases weak spot damage by 10% for 7 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. I am using the Micro Compressor, which reduces your heat generation per round when firing, and on weapons that overheat by 30%, and it increases heat decay rate by 30%. Now, without this ring, I really don't think this build functions, so this is a must in my mind. And then for the last ring here, I am using the Probability Chord for that increased crit damage, because as you can see in the previous footage, I'm hitting crits a lot of the time. And I really like crit damage as opposed to weak spot damage because it's significantly more reliable. Even if an enemy doesn't have weak spots, you can still hit that critical damage. For the traits, I am running Longshot and ammo reserves. Now those are just naturally coming with the Hunter and Gunslinger. I've got Fortify, which is increasing my armor effectiveness by 50%. I've got Untouchable, increasing my evade window by 30%, which I think is really helpful when you've got the heavy roll. I've got Regrowth, increasing your health generation by 1.2 per second. Now I actually have kind of switched to Regrowth over Siphoner for a lot of my more recent builds, and I just think it's a little bit more reliable than Siphoner and helping you recharge your health or regain your health when you don't have a relic that heals you. I've got Vigor, obviously, for the increased health, Expertise for the reduced skill cooldowns, because your Hunter and Gunslinger skill, they're not vital, you can still clear very well, but they're very, very helpful when putting DPS into a boss. And then these last two, I think, are incredibly important for the build. I've got Handling, which reduces weapon spread and recoil by 40%, and I've also got Footwork, which increases your movement speed while aiming by 50%. Now, this one I really, really like. I hope you saw it in some of the previous footage, but you can, while aiming, as a result of Footwork, you can dodge a lot of enemy abilities without even having to dodge. And that allows you to keep ADSing, keep those damage buffs up, and keep pumping out the bullets. And that's it for the build. So pretty straightforward. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you have any comments or questions, please just let me know. Any suggestions, I'll take those as well. And I'll see you next time.